Again, it's everything that everybody wants. The problem is it's very expensive, but we are starting to make inroads as far as IPPs are concerned. They're being seen, of course, as the light at the end of the tunnel to get us out of the country's electricity crisis. But Cliffe Dekker Hofmeyr is environmental law expert. Madoda Koti joining us this morning to talk about some of the teething challenges. And I'm sure legally, Madoda, good morning to you. It's not going to be as simple as get IPPs in place and that's the end of it. I'm sure there's a lot of red tape that we have to deal with first. So what are some of the big issues, perhaps from an environmental side as well?
Good morning, Gareth. Good morning to the viewers. Gareth, I think one of the challenges pertaining to solar PV is the regulation. There needs to be a streamlining of the regulations and the applications for the necessary authorizations in order to commence with those activities. I'll make an example by this is that although Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act allows people to generate electricity to a certain capacity threshold, but the environmental legislation does not exempt that person from obtaining the necessary authorization under the NEMA regulations. Also added to those issues are the infrastructure issues, because you remember that our electricity system in South Africa is so centralized in that Eskom is regarded as the buyer of the electricity and the department is the procurer of the electricity. Also, to add to that is the infrastructural challenges and also the climate change risk associated with solar PVs.
So what does someone who wants to sell their power back into the grid or move into an IPP role, what's the first thing they need to be aware of before they even think about doing that? What's the number one red tape that they need to try and cut?
I think besides the necessary determination under the Electricity Regulation Act, one needs to be aware that it's not going to be something that you're going to obtain in a short space of time because of the streamlining of the authorizations and applications pertaining to renewable energy projects. So one has to participate in a fully competitive bidding process that normally needs to be submitted with the IPP office. And if you are the successful bidder, then Eskom can purchase the electricity from that successful bidder. So the bidding process is a stringent process that you need to comply with. And it's got certain financial requirements in order to be the successful bidder.
So this almost goes against what I remember being the emergency legislative measures that the president put in place. It was meant to fast-track all of this as well, but unfortunately, as I'm sure you'll agree, Madoda, the devil is in the details when it comes to a situation like this. It's not quite as easy as the president saying, OK, go ahead, generate as much power as you can and sell it back to the grid. As usual, there's all the red tape that we have to try and cut through, isn't it?
Yes, Gareth, I agree with you. But now, one of the ways to open a market is to deregulate. If you're deregulating, you're saying that people must participate in a free market in order to obtain and participate in a competitive market pertaining to energy regulation and procurement. Now, the president on the 27th of July published a statement saying that they are going to be accelerating, which was one of the 5 key elements he mentioned in the public statement. But if the president is mentioning that, then the environmental legislation needs to be synchronized with what the president is saying. And to date, I remember that the Department of Environmental Affairs is about to publish a notice exempting persons who want to construct solar PVs from the need to obtain an environmental authorization under the NEMA regulations. But that will not be the challenge because you also need to sync it with other legislation such as your biodiversity and also your National Water Act, which are relevant when it comes to the construction of solar PVs.
As I say goodbye to you, what's the timeline on something like this, all this various syncing of different kinds of legislation, Madoda? What's your timeline look like? What do you imagine as far as time is concerned? How long will this take?
At the moment, Gareth, I can't tell in time frames because the Minister of Environmental Affairs needs to still publish a notice pertaining to the exemption of solar PVs projects, and we still need to see the format and the detail of the notice because in some instances it's not all about the notice will apply nationally because it's going to be sensitive to certain environmental sensitive areas. So we still need to finish that. But if the notice is published, then we are looking at about a timeline for about 57 days to register under the environmental legislation. But as I said, Gareth, the challenge is the synchronization of the relevant legislation.
Yeah, it's the synchronization, which sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. So, as is normally the case, one step forward, two steps back to try and get us as far as away from relying on Eskom as possible. But environmental law expert Madoda Koti, thank you very much indeed. When I say relying on Eskom, you still need Eskom, of course, but it's the IPPs, and it seems the president's putting measures in place to fast track it. But then, as we've just been hearing from Madoda, all the legislation needs to be synced. So for those in that sector, I'd love to hear from you. How is the red tape affecting you? Are you essentially set up with tech? You just can't get it going. We'd love to hear from you.